All right, what's up, y'all? Thanks for tuning in. I'm here with Vish, Mason. Thank you guys for joining. We'll start, Vish. We'll start with you. So, how old are you now?
I just turned 24.
24. Okay, cool. And you've been in how long have you been in insurance sales for?
About a year.
Year. What were you doing before that?
I actually got recruited by New York Life like 3 months before I kind of got into the broker kind of model.
Okay.
And before that, like me and my homie ran e-com store,
Got it.
and I was pretty sick. But anything before that was just kind of
Did you go to
retail.
college or high school or?
I went to high school. I went to Sac State for college.
Okay.
I didn't finish completely, but my dad kind of pushed me to get my MBA, and I was like, nah.
Got it. So you did a couple years of undergraduate there, and then dropped out to do e-commerce sales.
Pretty much, yeah.
And your dad did your parents want you to? They didn't want you to drop out. They were happy, unhappy. What was that like?
Nah, I'm brown, so like their whole thing is to push being a doctor or engineer.
Yeah.
And I just knew personally, like I couldn't do that
Mm-hmm.
because I just hated that idea of working for someone, but also like having a capped income or whatever. So I knew from the start, like high school, I never went to classes. I still passed somehow, but
Yeah.
I just knew like there's just something more. I just see people with supercars and stuff like that, and be like,
When did you tell your
Possible.
parents you weren't gonna drop out of college? What was that like?
I'm not gonna lie.
Or is it both parents, your mom and dad, or is it just your
It's
dad?
mainly my dad.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna lie. I didn't really tell them like up front.
Yeah.
It kind of just trickled because I knew like they would flip if
Yeah.
I just told them straight like I'm not going to do this anymore. So once I started getting into sales and started selling, and they saw I was more successful in what I was doing. Honestly, they still question me, especially my dad questions me. He's like,
Still do.
go get your degree. And I'll send him, I'll be like, dude, I did this, and this last month.
Yeah.
He'd be like, cool, it'd be cool to have an MBA. I'll be like, no, it's not cool.
Be like, I'm getting an MBA right now.
Yeah.
A
Like,
real MBA.
literally,
Yeah.
I'm like, I studied business and econ, but you actually do it when you do sales. So
It's funny. So I was gonna go to medical school. My parents are my mom's a nurse practitioner. My dad's a doctor. My
Mhm.
wife's a doctor. My whole family's all doctors. And my initial plan was to go sell insurance for a couple years, save money, and then go back to medical school. And then I really liked selling insurance. I liked teach people how to sell insurance after a few years. So I decided I was gonna do this full time. And probably about a year ago, I've got to be pretty good friends with someone who graduated from Harvard Business School. We'd worked with them a lot. And I asked her, I was like, because I still feel like because I don't have a MBA or like a more advanced degree, I'm like, I bet I have some gaps in knowledge.
yeah.
And I asked her, I'm like, should I go get an MBA somewhere? And she's like, the only reason you would get an MBA is if you went to like Harvard or somewhere like that because of the connections. And she's like, and you have a lot more connections than most of those people anyway. It's just from doing well in business. So no, you don't need it.
Yeah.
But there was an interesting perspective for someone, because I thought her answer was going to be like, you should go get an MBA because she went to Harvard Business School. And her answer was like, no, like you have real world connections. Like we talk about stuff in those classes that you experience every day. Like they'll like literally they'll have people come in, they'll have someone present a business idea. Like Jeff Bezos or someone like that will come in and pitch something, and then they'll like sit there and like critique the business. Not Jeff Bezos, probably, but someone like with a a shittier startup company, and they'll like critique it. And she's like, you do that with real stakes. Like they're playing with poker chips, you're playing with like real money.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. It was interesting for me to hear that perspective because I always thought I thought her answer would be like, no, you should get an MBA.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you don't learn anything you don't know. You only do it for connections, and you already have those.
It's
So,
unfortunate they find out like
yeah.
after those 4 or 6 years of doing school. It's like,
Yeah, and she's like, I'm glad I did it because I know some people, but she also did sales, like went to learn how to do like direct sales to learn that side too, because her goal is to be a CEO of a big company. And she's like, I learned way more from doing mortgage sales than I did from going to business school.
yeah.
So I think as long as you're paying attention and learning stuff along the way. So you've been doing this for a year now. What is it like with you? So they still push you to go back to school here and there?
Not at this point. Like, if I entertain the conversation, it will come up.
Got it.
But I don't, because I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
There's no reason to hear that. I'm already set on what I'm gonna do. So it's like, there's no way you can change my mind.
They get over it eventually. So
100%. Yeah.
I've been
slowly getting like that.
I've been 7.5. I've been doing that for almost 8 years.
Yeah.
And the last 3 years or 4 years, my parents haven't brought it up one time since then.
Yeah.
You know, so I think eventually like they just see that you're gonna do what you're gonna do, and that your mind's not gonna be changed. And when you start making like a lot of money too, they really don't care. They're
Yeah, like
"You're
if
gonna-"
I buy him a house and car, like, are you really
Yeah.
going to be like going to NBA? Like,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I remember and my deciding factor if I was gonna go back to school or not is my first year selling insurance. I made $226,000 net. Like
Mhm.
after I paid taxes, after I paid leads, everything. That's what I made selling. I sold like 450 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked my dad, I was like, "How long did it take you from the time you started medical school to make over $226,000?" And he was like 9 years. I'm like, "Yeah, F that. I'm not doing that."
How old were you? How old were you at the time?
At that time I was 23.
Crazy.
My first year in business was 22, so at the end of the first year I was 23.
That's
Yeah.
nuts. Yeah.
You know, so
Same type of timeline, yeah.
yeah. And then I remember telling them like I made this much my first year. And the interesting thing, so you said you're brown, like Indian, yeah.
Mhm,
My family's all Polish and like all very professional. Expect you to do what you're supposed to do, like
Yeah.
you follow the path. But I told my dad, I'm like, I actually really believe in what we do because we help people with life insurance, and I get to recruit people and teach them how to make money. So like I still help people just a different way than you do. And he was
Yeah.
like, I never had that perspective. So it's cool to have that conversation. So what about
Yeah.
for you, Mason? What's your background? Did you go to college, high school? How'd you get into sales?
Yeah, I went to high school, obviously. I went to ASU I dropped out like 3.5 years in. I was going the medical route as well.
The dropout rate's got to be pretty high at ASU, I would
For
guess,
sure.
right? I went
Yeah,
to
no
University
doubt.
of Colorado, and I think ASU is even a bigger party school than that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole time I was at ASU, I didn't know I was gonna drop out, but I knew it being that route, just working for somebody, I knew none of that was me.
Yeah.
Not because I was lazy, because quite the opposite. I just didn't want to be a slave to somebody else for the rest of my life. I remember being in like 7th grade and talking to my dad, just like, dude, literally in 7th grade, I remember, I swear on everything, just, I came home crying one day from school, just like bitching and just like, I don't want to wake up every day, go to work, come home and just, that be my life every single day.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a response. He was just like, that's what it is.
What does your dad do for work?
He's a vice president of Bank of America at Bank of America.
Got it. So he has a good job.
Yeah, he's got a good job, and
Yeah.
he went to college. He didn't graduate either. He's a smart person, but he's just very, this is what we do. You got to wake up and work. And I didn't know what an entrepreneur was until I was in like a junior in college.
Yeah.
So up until that point, I just knew that it wasn't the route for me, but I was just going to follow suit until I figured something out.
I heard a rumor when I was in college that there was like a very specific type of STD that started at ASU. Is that true?
Don't ask me, bro. Don't ask me.
I remember someone told me that there was like a super virus that started there, and I was like, all right, I'm not gonna ever go to.
I don't
I'm never
doubt
gonna
it.
visit that.
I do not doubt it, but
It was off topic, but I couldn't get. Once you said ASU, I was wondering if that was a real thing.
I
or
have
that
never
was
had it, I promise, bro.
Okay. Well, no, yeah, I believe you. So, all right. So what was your first job in sales?
I worked at a gym
Okay.
sales, and I think that was great for me, not because of the sales part, but it allowed me to talk to a whole bunch of people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's good for sales. I wasn't like, you didn't have to convince anybody to buy a gym membership. They walked in the gym sold itself, but just being able to get outside of my comfort zone, having to talk to every single person that I met,
Yeah.
that was big for me. It allowed me to really grow. But then I started insurance, honestly, at FFL when I was like 19 years old.
Someone recruited you from the gym to go sell. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was when we were doing in-home sales. Yeah.
Yeah.
2019. Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, so it was completely different. And
Mhm.
I mean, you did it, so I
Yeah.
can't really complain to you, but it was tough. It was way different than this.
Yeah. You had to get leads. You had to travel all over the place. You had
Yeah.
to fly all over the place. Yeah.
Even getting leads was like you would have to wake up at a certain day, wake
Yeah.
up super early to just get.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. It was actually insane.
Yeah.
Compared to this. But yeah, the hardest part for me was I remember just like getting porched day after day, driving
Yeah.
to like Kingman, Arizona from my house like 2 hours just to knock on their door. They don't answer.
Yeah.
I remember that was the last day. I drove to Kingman. And I was just like, this is not for me. But
for
I don't
one
know.
appointment. And they said they're definitely going to be there, and you were like, they're definitely going to buy, and then they just, they're inside.
100%.
Yeah, and they don't.
Yeah,
they
both
don't
cars
show
in the
them.
driveway.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. Oh man, thinking about it is tough, but yeah, I mean that.
What I always do those ones is I'd bang on the door and I go, "Are you guys being held hostage? I'm going to call the cops so that they can break you out of your hostage situation. I'm calling 911," and then they would run to the door and open the door.
At a certain point, you have to have like the confidence to do that though. Like you were probably decent at that point.
Yeah, that was my second going on third year in the business. So yeah, I'd sold probably $900,000
For sure.
at that point.
Yeah, like if I was better, if I would
I
have
was
stuck
effing
it
with
out.
people at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Then you can like have fun with it and be,
Yeah.
be confident a little bit. I was a puppy dog with my tail between my legs.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, that was bad. So right after that, I thought being like a financial advisor would be the better route. You know, not an insurance salesman, but a financial advisor.
Very professional.
Very professional,
Yeah.
dressing up in a suit and tie every day. And I realized that was pretty much the same thing that I didn't want to do. Just you're ultimately working for somebody else, like a big company. And I mean, I did that for like 2 years, made no money. I think I had 2 clients. One of them was myself. I sold myself like a $1,000 insurance policy a month, like 12,000 premium.
Yeah.
So
So you still sold insurance while you were being a financial advisor.
Yeah, that was honestly how they all get paid,
Got it.
selling insurance. But
And
yeah,
then what now brought you back into insurance where you saw like this is the right, because you've been in different sales vehicles, like what's the right vehicle, why does working like where you're working now make sense to you from what you've kind of seen, because you've been around a little bit and you've seen different opportunities, like why do you feel confident recruiting people into where you're doing now?
the biggest thing is, everybody here is you're your own boss.
Mm-hmm.
So it's everything that I was looking for to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's, my generation, that's big. I mean, obviously you can't teach somebody's work ethic, but everybody wants to be their own boss. Nobody wants to be told what to do every day. So that is it's easy for me to find the right people because I have a good network of those people.
Mm-hmm.
And to just explain to them what the job is. It's kind of, it sells itself. If they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. But that is big. And then the uncapped commission, nobody's in charge of how much I make. That's, that's big as well. True.
How do you decide if you're looking at opportunities? Because there's a lot of different, like you could go into solar sales or pest control sales or car sales. And then in any industry, you could work with a bunch of different IMOs. Like I think the team is the most important part.
The people is the biggest thing.
What do you look for when you're trying to find a leader that you want to work with? Or if someone's new and they're like, hey, like, how do I decide? What are some things you advise them to look at in leadership?
In our business particularly, it's really easy to be fake.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've been around that for too long. I know fake people. It's like really easy to see somebody who's just not genuine, and somebody authentic and genuine is genuine. It goes a long way for me. And I feel like for most people, it's not that big of a deal, that somebody can talk about how much they make or what car they drive, but somebody who, thinks about me, like what I want, what I'm looking for. I can tell them my goals and they can relate to what I'm looking for. And that's honestly the biggest thing for me. Talked to a lot of people in insurance and just outside of insurance. But just finding somebody that relates on a personal level, that's big. That's honestly big.
I think the biggest mistake people make when they're recruiting and training new agents is they give them all the same template. And they're like, hey, you should make this many dials, call this type of leads, work these hours. And like, they just give everyone the same thing.
Yeah.
And what I learned is like, you may do that because you're competitive and you're like, that guy knows what he's doing probably, so I'll listen to it. But if I go like, okay, like, hey, how much do you make now? What do you need to make? Like, what is your goal? How many hours a week are you willing to work? Like, do you have kids? Are you married or not? Like, do you have a girlfriend or not? What are your responsibilities outside of this? And then I can like put together a game plan based on your schedule and your goals and go like, hey, this is what we do to get you to X income, Y, Z. Like, here's what the roadmap looks like in a year from now. Then you're much more willing to fight for that than the template I laid out for everybody.
Because you see it, like it's related to you.
Yeah, it's a path for you.
It's a path for you.
Yeah.
And it's the first time, honestly, like a month ago, a couple of weeks ago was the first time in my entire life that somebody sat down with me and talked about what I wanted, my path, how to get to where I wanted to go. Jake mapped it out for me. It was the first time he put Fastidious in a circle and said, this is what you guys need to do for your, like, it hit home because it was related to me. It wasn't just like an agent and do the same thing, that went a long way. Yeah. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think people just take that like that blanket approach. And did the answer maybe the same, by the way? Maybe you buy this many leads, you make this many dials. It may have been what you were gonna say, but you can get someone to be engaged in it by
For sure.
showing them the roadmap that it's gonna provide, right?
Yeah.
Vish, what about for you sell like 50 grand a month, right? On your own, typically somewhere in that 40, 50 grand a month, somewhere in that range.
More. Come on.
What's your best month? In insurance
50,
sales.
57.
57. Okay. And you netted probably 30 something from that?
No, honestly, it was higher. It was like 40 or 45.
Okay. So your biggest income month was 45 grand, right?
Yeah, I'll say so.
Okay. So what are a couple of tips you give people who would be like looking into getting into insurance sales as far as like it can be anything you want? Is it your schedule? Is it your lead flow? Is it things you say on the phone, the way you say it? Like what are the three biggest, if you give someone three things, what would the three tips be you give them?
I think the first one is consistency.
Okay.
Because when I started, I was working out of my bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe every couple of days I'd work, every few weeks I'd work. But being consistent, when we moved to Chicago together, is when I worked for 3 or 4 months straight every day, 12
Mhm.
hours a day, and we wrote the most business and most deposits I'd ever seen in my life. So sticking to the schedule, whatever dials you got to hit, do it. But also showing up.
Yeah.
Like the start time is huge. If you get in the office every day at 6 or 7 for 5 days a week, Saturday, sure, coming a little later, but as long as you have that set schedule, I think consistency is huge. I think the second biggest thing is who you're around. So
Yeah.
plugging into the office kind of changed a lot for me too. Just seeing that this random guy could do 10K in a week. I was like, if he can do that, I can do it. And then if I see someone working, I'm like, why am I not working?
So you're good at getting around good people. How do you stay away from because there's always like if you're at an office, if we're in our office here, if say there's 30 agents out there, there's gonna be like 6 killers,
Yeah.
and there's gonna be 24 people that sell like 15 grand a month. Like the biggest mistake I think agents make is they let the other 24 people breathe like negativity into them,
Yeah.
and they like make you feel like it's okay. They're like, oh, the leads suck, the clients suck,
Yeah,
like.
yeah. That's the
The
worst.
carriers suck. All of it sucks, right? And like we were talking about this before this started. I'm like, I sold my best year in insurance sales was 2020, and I sold 700 grand with like 2 carriers, and I got out of the field in October that year.
Yeah.
And Easton beat me that year, but I always remind him it's because I got out of the field
Uh-huh.
in October.
Yeah.
But like with 2 carriers, so like it doesn't. You can sell a lot with a couple carriers, and
That's
we were doing
insane,
in home sales, right? So we were driving around, flying around, like. So there's a lot of excuses that can be made. How do you stay away from the negative people and like elevate around the right people when there's an office full of people that are trying to be negative and drag you back down with them?
I think you really have to read the room.
Mhm.
And I don't think everyone has that ability. It is like
I agree with that.
kind of hard
Yeah.
to pick and choose who you should talk to and like be around. But I think it just comes down to like if you know who the top sellers are,
Yeah.
just sit with them. Like take yourself out of that environment and put yourself in where you should be.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of what changed for me is like getting out of just selling alone and being around an office. Even Jonah, just at the time being a huge agency owner,
Yeah.
just even being in that environment, I was like, I'm seeing it for myself in person.
Yeah.
Like they can tell me so much over a Zoom call or a phone call, but like seeing it in person was just a game changer.
I think when you get around people that have done it, hopefully the biggest thing I always tell people is like, hopefully you meet me or anyone else is doing well, and you're like, oh, if that guy could do it, I could figure it out too. Like
Exactly,
it's not
yeah.
they're not special,
Exactly.
but I've just been doing it for 8 years. I was telling somebody the other day, like, why do you have such a big agency? I'm like, I've just been doing the same shit for 8 years.
Yeah.
Every day, like I wake up the same time, I work out every day, I do all the same things. And your point about consistency and like being at the office first, like I think the first 3-4 years in business, there's not a lot of balance because you're kind of in survival and fighting for your life mode. And then
Yeah.
you can earn some balance later. But like the first 4 years I was in business, I took 0 vacations.
Yeah.
The first vacation I took was my honeymoon, and I took that. I remember we left on Christmas Day. We got back on New Year's Day because I knew that was like the time where I would be able to sell the least amount of insurance and the most agents wouldn't call me.
Yeah.
It's the first vacation I took, and like I love my wife, but dude, if she wasn't supportive of that, we wouldn't be married now,
Facts.
For sure.
like that was that, and she was always very supportive, but that was like my vision was like, this is what I want to do. And this is what, and dude, at that point, I weighed more than I should have. I weighed like 240 at one point. I weigh like 200 pounds now, but I didn't care. I was so driven. I had to learn how to be better with, time management, personal, all these things to be able to, have more balanced life. But in the beginning, it was just, how do you survive in business?
Yeah.
And how do you get through that initial, phase?
And we don't, we don't take any vacation other than coming out to things like Austin or San Diego, to learn for the business truly. But outside of that, we honestly don't want to do anything else.
No desire
and it's
to do
kind
it.
of the most fun we have is doing it because we see so much potential, and it's like crazy now. Yeah.
What's one sales tip you have for everybody? Because I think people look at what we do and they're like, oh, it's probably hard to learn how to sell, and it's not, because you get to call people who already filled out a request for insurance, right?
Yeah.
But what's your biggest tip to someone who's like, I don't know if say if I was a new agent and I was like, I don't know if I'm a salesperson or not. I don't know if I could do insurance sales.
I think the biggest turning point for me was taking control of the conversation. Because at the end of the day, like, you can't overthink it, especially in this type of industry where it is just a phone call.
Yeah.
Where you can either you're gonna get hung up on, or they're gonna hang up on you.
Yeah.
Or
you're gonna hang up
on them.
Yeah.
Like, you can press the red button too.
Yeah.
And go to the next one. Like, taking control, kind of, even if you don't know anything about what you're doing, just having even fake confidence or conviction in what you're selling. It does take a while to get that. Personally, for me, it was. But
I think you don't have to be very good at sales though, because you can be so assumptive, right? Like, that's what I learned. I remember when I was selling, I was like, oh, I don't have to like sell every single person. I can just put the numbers so much in my favor. And now with virtual sales, like you said, if you live in, if you guys are in Pacific time, right, in Arizona, which goes back and forth, which is confusing, but you're in Pacific time in Arizona, it's like if you wake up and start dialing at 7 or 6, you can be dialing the East Coast at 9 o'clock, and you can dial all day. You can make 1,000 dials, right? Yep. And so you can make up for if you're not a very good salesperson just by putting the odds in your favor so much.
And people don't understand. There's also like people that whatever you say, they're gonna say yes.
100%.
And like, that's your easiest close. They're just like, yes, I want this. Yes, let's go with that option. Yes, yes, yes.
It's like 1 out of 10 presentations.
Yeah,
like,
honestly,
1 out of 10 people you show numbers to are going to say yes no matter who calls them, right?
Yeah. Even whatever you say, you're like, I handle the mortgage protection. I handle this and that. It's like, they're just like, okay, yeah, I do remember that. Sure, let's do it.
I remember those people in the field would be the ones that would have like a drawer just full of insurance policies that were all active too. Like, they're just insurance buying people, and so that's going to happen if you put the odds in your favor enough. You mentioned something, and we can kind of probably wrap with this. I think your generation, I think my generation and yours, like, I'm almost 30 now. You're 24 and you're 25. So, like, I think our generations do want to work for themselves. And I think it got a rep of being like lazy, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's just people don't want to work for other people.
Yeah.
And they want to blaze. Like, I'm not a very good employee, but I'll work 100 hours a week for myself.
Yeah, facts.
So what would you guys could both cover this, but what would you guys say to people who are like, feel like they've kind of been forced into getting like a job, or like they're following normal route, but they hate it? Like, how this has changed the way you guys like view the world, view money, view like yourself. You're probably a lot more confident now than you were before, right? Yep. Like, why is this a good fit for people who don't feel like they should take that traditional route of, I go to school, I go to college, I get a job, I get a 401k, and then I die?
Well, there's people that just know that that's not, like me, they just know that is not for them. And if they think that thought, which is just like, I cannot do that. Yeah. Just look at your options. What are your options? Well, you don't have that many. You can't I guess you can just start a business selling courses or drop shipping but
which, by the way, people that sell courses that have never done
anything,
are
what
the
are
worst
they selling?
People ever.
For sure. Yeah. So it's just like, if you're somebody who has not done anything and you're coming straight out of high school or college with no skills, what can you do? Yeah. Well, everybody can pick up the phone and dial. Yeah. Every single person can do that. And our job is so crazy because, you can hear about it online. You can watch this podcast and say, did they really fill this card out? And until you call them and they say, yes, I remember filling that card out, you may not believe it. But, you're going to run into somebody that's like, yes. And then you just sold your first deal, and that builds confidence in the job. But outside of the job, it does a lot. So, I mean, taking control of your own life is the biggest thing. Not a lot of people want to take control of their own life. Some
Yeah.
people are meant to be slaves, and you know that's their prerogative.
Well, I think a lot of people think that or at least until COVID, a lot of people thought having a job was more secure than working for
Yeah.
yourself
Mhm.
until you get furloughed
Yeah.
and you realize someone else signs your paycheck, right?
Mhm.
And you're like, oh crap, like, maybe it's not as secure as I thought it was.
Yeah.
What about for you? What would you say to people who are looking at it and they're like, in my gut, I don't feel like being an employee is the right fit for me, but I don't know if I could make it as an entrepreneur.
I think the two biggest things are a lot of people it comes down to complacency of
Yeah.
just being happy where they're at, making $3 or $4 grand a month, going out on Saturday,
Yeah.
drinking with your friends, rinse and repeat. So you have to step out of that and be like, I have to do something else. But also taking the risk is the biggest thing. When we went out to Chicago, we both had
Negative money.
yeah.
I had negative money in my account.
I had
It's
like
crazy.
I had like $100 to $200. He had like negative 500.
Yeah.
Truly.
But I had some leads, and I was like, dude, I'll just run these.
Yeah.
And then like my first week in Chicago, I wrote like 30K off old leads, which was nuts.
Yeah. Just 'cause you're around other people that were doing
Yeah.
the same
Exactly.
thing. Yeah.
And I didn't have that was the last of my dollars to even make it out to Chicago, but like just taking the risk, and
It's like, what do you have to lose at that point anyways, right?
Exactly,
You
yeah.
lose that $200, who cares? You're already broke anyway.
exactly
Yep.
like
What are you gonna
$200
do?
and $0 is like
It's the same thing, yeah.
Same thing. So
Yeah.
it was taking the risk and having the self-belief. Like self-belief was huge. I was like, I will make it work. He thinks the exact same way. Like
That's what I
It's
think.
like-
A lot of people overthink that, and I know that I'm like a lot more. I like risk a lot more than most people,
Yeah.
but I think like if you're younger, like you're 25 or even 30 and under, it's like you don't have a lot to lose.
You
Like
don't, yeah.
worst case scenario, you end up exactly where you are now, and you tried something for 3 months. And I think because I was talking to someone the other day about it. They're like, I want to do this and this, but what if I fail? I'm like, what if? Who cares? What if you fail? You're probably gonna fail a lot.
yeah,
I'm like, I failed a lot. I made a lot of dumb choices. I've lost a lot of money, but through that, I've also made a lot of money too.
exactly. Even when you're in the business,
You're gonna make
fail.
mistakes,
Yeah.
yeah, but you can't be scared to make mistakes. That's how you grow. I think our business. I'm like, there's nothing else that you can have that you have the market that we have. There's 150 million people in the United States who have no life insurance, right? There's no middlemen. You get paid directly from the carriers like the next day.
Mhm.
Speed to pay is incredibly fast, right? Scalable because you can do it from wherever. You can do virtual sales. You can do, you can build your own business if you want to. You can recruit, but you don't have to recruit if you don't want to.
It's unreal.
It's
It's literally.
incredibly powerful.
I
So-
always told people in the house when we first moved out to Chicago, I was so mind blown by everything because I dumbed it down and I realized like it's your words, how you position the words
Yeah.
that come out of your mouth, your tongue, equates to dollars in your bank account. If you just get better,
and people you help too. that
true,
need
yeah,
help.
that's of course that's very.
Yeah.
It hits me differently. That's very
Yeah.
important for me. But on that side, it's just like if you say the words correctly, you just deposit money.
You
Yeah.
will get paid.
Like you
yeah.
don't have to do anything else except say the right words.
No.
And it's just like once I realized that, I was just like, dude, there's nothing like this business.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I
And
agree
I
with that.
still read the script word for word. I look
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
it. I look at it on my computer every time I sell.
And the other
Word
thing,
for word, like
and to your point, like there's nothing like this business, dude. A lot of people aren't gonna make it because it's not easy. I think that's what
Yeah.
people screw up is they sell insurance as the easiest thing ever. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work, but there's no cap on it. You know,
Yeah.
It's simple, not easy. Though.
not easy. Yeah, and people are like, oh, someone the other day I was interviewing, and they were like, I talked to someone at a different company. They said I would make $1 million for sure my first year, and I'm like, I would be willing to bet all my money you're not gonna make $1 million your first year.
it's so
And I
fun.
was like, we have 800 agents that sell a piece of business every month. I've had one guy that made $1 million his first year ever, maybe two, that made $1 million their first year ever. So I was like, if I was a betting man, and I am, I would bet you're not going to make
For
$1 million
sure.
your first
Yeah.
year, but you could make multiple six figures, or maybe you'll be one of the few. But can you make that in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years? Absolutely. But you have to work your ass off.
Yeah.
And he was like, wow, that was refreshing. I've never had, like, everyone else just told me I was gonna make $1 million my first year. I'm
That's
like, yeah, you're not
insane.
going to. But so I think that, with all the good, you have to also say it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah,
But
of course.
people that are willing to risk it and put themselves out there, they're gonna get rewarded in that way. So
Yeah.
appreciate y'all coming in, talking with us,
Thank
and
you.
I'm looking forward to watching y'all grow this year. It's gonna be
Yes,
great.
Appreciate you, bro.
Thank you, brother.